and welcome. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo Story, our digital platform that shines a light on some of the most interesting newsmakers and issues of our time. Now, they often say that truth just does not compare with fiction. The drama of truth is probably unparalleled. And today we'll be looking and talking about one of the most dramatic figures from Indian history. We're talking about Sardar Udham Singh, and his life is going to be essayed in a new movie that is soon coming to Amazon. This is an extraordinary story of a revolutionary so stirred into anger by the Jallianwala Bagh massacre that many years later he assassinates the British officer he believes to be responsible, the architect, as it were, of the carnage that took place at the Jallianwala Bagh. What is, of course, surprising is how little we know about Sardar Udham Singh. And to talk a little bit about the great man, the great revolutionary, and where his principles reconcile with the Gandhian spirit of Azadi, let's bring up three very, very special guests. First, let me welcome on the program Vicky Kaushal. I know he needs no introduction. You know him as the superstar from our screens, but he is the man who will be essaying the role of Sardar Udham, and I can't wait to see Vicky play the many shades of this extremely complex character. We're also joined by Nonica Datta. Nonica has a very, very interesting, updated book out on Jallianwala Bagh, one originally written by her father, who in many ways was a witness and had friends who were witnesses to the carnage that took place at the Jallianwala Bagh in Amritsar. And finally, Shoojit Sircar, who is captivated by the story of Sardar Udham Singh, moved very much like Udham Singh by his own visit to Jallianwala Bagh, and that is how the idea of this movie was born. So, Shoojit, let me start by asking you to talk a little bit about what happens when you go to Jallianwala Bagh. I think it's 1999 when you go. How old are you? It's your first trip. What did you know before, and what happens when you reach there? What does it make you think? What does it make you feel?
I think I was just in my, I think, third year college or just out of college, I think, yeah. And I also went to a college which is also Shahid Bhagat Singh. So, because I was a fanboy of Bhagat Singh. So, since then, I think I've been following a little bit of the Punjab part of the revolution, especially the pre-independence movement. Um, I went to Golden Temple. We went there for some street theater. We were doing there. So for some factories and for some workers, and and then I had to go to Golden Temple, and from there we visited Jallianwala Bagh. So it was quite it impacted me quite. I was really taken aback by the by what I saw there. And especially what I saw was that it's not just the bullets, or that was of course one part, on the wall. But if you go to that particular place, it's like a prison. It's all covered with big house, brick houses, and possibly there's one possibly lane which is also quite narrow, and there are other couple of gates and small narrows. So I imagine, and at that time, how what would have happened when people were trying to escape possibly, and they came on the middle of the fire, especially on the day of the Baisakhi. So it impacted me quite badly just thinking, and since then I've been going there. And my what affected me was my next visit. I went there in 2001, and in 2001 I think it was the 13th April. And on that particular day, I think a lot of people gather there, and they pay respects to whatever happened there, and of course pay a silence there. And I saw a couple of families coming with really old people there, and they were on the crutches and some were on the wheelchair. And one of the really old man I saw, he was just sitting by the side. He was not main function. He was not in there. He was just sitting by the side of the wall, and her two, I think, possibly grandchildren, and they were just sitting, and she was just sitting there alone, silent. And then later I went there and asked one of the family members that she was she there. Of course, she was quite old there, but she said she no, she wasn't there. she heard stories from her father. So her father's brother was there, and she heard stories from there. So she went there just, and she was crying possibly. So that also had a little effect on me. And since then, I think I was just digging the subject. That's it. I never thought I'll make a film, but I was just digging into the
Yeah.
subject.
And actually, what's really staggering is how little we know about these men who defined our history. And Vicky, I'm sure when you were researching the role, you must have discovered कि हमें कितना कम मालूम है. Even when I was preparing for this conversation, there were things I was reading I had absolutely no idea about. I know that in the movie you show the many faces of Udham Singh, but actually he lives so many different personas, from being an extra on a film set to being a carpenter to being a salesman, a shopkeeper, a lingerie seller, a welder, and it's just, I mean, इतना ज्यादा जो एक तरह कहते हैं हिस्ट्री का ड्रामा है, we have in our present no idea of it at all. So Vicky, speak a little bit about how you've prepared for this, what you read up, what you were shocked to discover, what you had absolutely no idea of.
Yes, actually, what you pointed out is so it was so important for us in telling the story, because in the 200 years of the British Raj, I think there were 90 years of India's rebellion mode, where from 1857, which was the first revolt, to 1947, when we actually got independence, there are so many unsung heroes which we don't know about, what they did, and how impactful were their actions in the final freedom of our country. And Sardar Udham Singh is definitely one such figure from that chapter of history. In our history books so far, we've only probably come across Sardar Udham Singh in probably one line, where we have to close the chapter of Jallianwala Bagh as that the massacre was finally avenged by a person named Sardar Udham Singh when he assassinated Michael O'Dwyer in London in 1940. But nothing more than that. I belong to a Punjabi family. My ancestral home in Punjab is just 2 hours away from Jallianwala Bagh in Amritsar.
Where is it?
So
It's in Amritsar
it's in
itself?
Hoshiarpur. It's in Hoshiarpur.
Hoshiarpur.
It's exactly 2 hours drive from Amritsar. And so while growing up, regarding Sardar Udham Singh, Shahid Bhagat Singh, I was not only dependent on the history books, because it's part of our culture, it's part of our upbringing. These stories I've heard while growing up, because I would read one line in the books about anything about Punjab, and I would come back home and ask my mom or my dad about that, and they would regale me in the stories. But what I was not aware of was his journey, like you mentioned, his state of mind. Uh, I only knew his relevance to Jallianwala Bagh when he was a kid, and then in 1940, where he went to London and assassinated Michael O'Dwyer, and his imprisonment after that for 3 months, and uh, then on 31st July 1940, he was hanged. But like we mentioned about the different identities he took up, how he was a wanted man in his own country, and he had to go cross bordering into different parts of the globe, be it America, be it Spain, Italy, Germany, Russia, and then finally into London. What he did for all these years, like you mentioned, it's bizarre to know that, when you connect those professions to a revolutionary and a freedom fighter, that just for survival he was a background artist in a film called Elephant Boy, a British film, that too. And then he was a welder, a voyager, and then all sorts of things. He was working in mills, he was a driver. It's bizarre to know that there was this guy who was doing all these things at the same time, trying to regroup revolutionaries from all across the globe, to rebuild and regroup his HSRA movement, which was crushed after the hanging of Bhagat Singh and Sukhdev and
Yes.
Rajguru. So all his journey and his state of mind is
Hmm.
something that is so untapped in our history books and films. Uh, and also Sujita's mission for this film was to actually tap onto that state of mind of a
Yeah.
revolutionary, of Sardar
How would
Udham.
you how would you describe that state of mind, Vicky?
It is, for me, what was my main struggle to get that character, to get that note of that character, was how can someone live with that pain, live with that agony for 21 years. He could not put water on that fire in his heart for 21 years. He was a kid when he experienced Jallianwala Bagh in 1919, and then for 21 years he waited. He waited as patiently as he could to finally, avenge that bloodshed that he experienced. He knew very well that he's not going to survive that. He knew very well that he's going to be hanged, and he's almost welcomed it with open arms. He was that
Yeah.
committed by it. To kind of touch that note was something that was challenging for me, because we're living in times where we are bombarded with information every 3 minutes of our lives. Every day you're feeling different, and it's just that if you're pained about something, you could be pained about something three which is completely flippingly different about the same thing in a few months or the next
Yeah.
season. But here
Yeah.
is this guy who just could not get over that for 21 years, and that definitely was the challenging part.
It sounds fascinating. And when I was listening to you, I was thinking about, and Nonica, I'm sure you'll be able to tell us a little more about this. When the conversation that takes place between the British judge and Udham Singh, when he sentences him to his death, and the judge wants a written statement, and Udham Singh wants to read it out in court, and he does so in his halting English. He's the son of a peasant, and as Vicky just described, he goes through many things, many avatars, just to not just to able to be able to cross borders furtively, but also just to live. Uh, but Nonica, I'm struck by something Vicky said. We live in the age of instant gratification. We live in the age of TLDR, too long didn't read. We live in the age where we don't even remember anything in 24 hours. Here's a man who lived with something for 2 decades. That's how deeply he felt what he saw. Right? Speak a little bit about what we know about Udham Singh and what people don't know. Historians like yourselves know, but like people don't know, and hopefully this film will help mainstream that story. Nonica, go ahead. You're on mute, Nonica. I think you're on mute at your end. You need to
Yeah,
unmute
yeah.
yourself.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
thanks.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
sorry about that. Well, I mean, you're very right that this is a forgotten chapter of our own modern Indian history. And the fact that this film is being made at this point, I think it's highly commendable, because this is a very warm, I mean, we receive it. I mean, as a student of history, I receive it with great warmth. This is a very welcoming move that we have a film on Udham Singh, because Sardar Udham Singh actually represents a moment in Indian history which has been eradicated from mainstream histories of nationalism. When we were studying history, in fact, it is the anti-colonial Gandhian nationalism that was kind of celebrated, and it continues to be kind of, seen as the main ideology or main impulse behind the freedom of India. But really, it was the work of Udham Singh, it was the revolutionary fervor of the likes of Udham Singh, and that entire galaxy actually includes the role of Bhagat Singh. In fact, Bhagat Singh was Udham Singh's guru, and a range of revolutionaries who were part of this early modern history in the early 20th century. So right from the Bengal revolutionaries or the Gadar movement or Bhagat Singh, and at the center of this entire movement was Netaji Subhash Bose. So Udham Singh is part of that large nationalist narrative which has been silenced in mainstream histories of Indian nationalism. And as Shoojit also pointed out, he's a product of the massacre. As I've seen the clips, I mean, he's really a product of the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. But what is also important, I think, for us to remember is, and I think Vicky pointed that out, that he's a global figure. Udham Singh is a global figure. He's a cosmopolitan figure. I mean, his travels are awesome, right? And at the same time, he can't be just reduced to a certain kind of identity politics, because his vision is very eclectic. He has he identifies himself as Ram Mohammad Singh Azad. Now, this symbolizes the unity of India. So it's such a charismatic, wonderful personality, but he's part of a very fascinating, but however, unfortunately forgotten chapter in our history. So I think this is amazing that this film is going to actually bring to the larger audience this
That's a lovely.
forgotten hero. Hello. Yeah.
That's a lovely detail of Ram Mohammad Singh Azad. Vicky, to you, and then I'll come to you, Shoojit. A question on our live stream: how did the writers, the actors, and the directors research Udham Singh? Even Vicky, obviously meaning Wikipedia here. Even Wikipedia has such a small section on him. And so, Vicky, how did you go beyond Wikipedia to learn about Udham Singh in depth?
आई थिंक विकी को विकिपीडिया से बहुत ज्यादा पढ़ाई करनी पड़ी थी इस फिल्म के लिए एंड आई वाज रियली फॉर्चुनेट टू बी इन द हैंड्स ऑफ सुजीत दा, रोनी लहिरी एंड द एंटायर रिसर्च टीम ऑफ दिस फिल्म बिकॉज सुजीत दा हैज लिव्ड विद द स्टोरी फॉर a parallel that you can draw from the story is that he's lived with this for more than 2 decades. He had come from Delhi to Bombay to make this film 21 years back, and now we are, getting to show this film. So he has been researching ever since. And when I came on board about 3 months before we actually started filming Sardar Udham, I was given this plethora of all the research, all the documents that they had gotten from different ways. Because, like it was mentioned in the question, that there is even the Wikipedia page on this character is so small, so they had to bring it out from different ways. And the way Sardar Udham Singh is mentioned in our books is so mysterious and fascinating, because some books say that he was there, he was not there, he was like this, he was like that, and every statement and every document is only said as we have heard that this has happened and we believe that this had happened. So there's no really concrete evidence of his journey. So we had kind of like bullet points on a piece of paper, and we had to kind of make a map of his journey and kind of use our imagination to actually feel that, okay, maybe this is the human being that he was. And then from that point on, as an actor, my goal was to uh, actually internalize his state of mind, like we discussed earlier, because that was very important, and that was the uh, major brief that I got from Sujita, that that's how I want to show Sardar Udham. It's not about what he did, and it's more about his ideologies and what he believed in and what he was trying to say 100 years back.
Yeah. When you think of him, because as you said, you had to rely a little bit on interpretation, right?
Yes.
When you think of him, how do you think of him? If he was like somebody contemporary and you had to introduce him or talk about him to a third person, how would you describe him?
I actually saw him as a child. I saw him as a
Really?
child, was very pure in the heart, because I feel somebody who's that innocent or pure in his core can get so affected by an incident.
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah.
it can, if for a person who's that pure, only then his core can get shifted to that extreme.
Yeah.
That I felt, the way I looked at him was that one evening he was mature by 20 years already. That one night probably just
Yeah.
he was not 20 years old anymore from the next day onwards. And I always saw him like that. Whenever I had to touch any note of emotion, I saw him. I had to tap on to the child in me, or that pure corner inside my heart, that, okay, what if I play it from that corner
Yeah.
of purity.
Yeah. Shujit, I think Nonica made a very interesting point about how so much of how we've read our history has been through the Gandhian prism, and not to take anything away from the moral force of Gandhiji's non-violence, but, it's less detailed, the understanding of the other more militaristic idea of seizing Azadi from the colonialists. And one of the really chilling things that the British do at Jallianwala Bagh is to use Indian against Indian, right? There is the use of Indian soldiers to fire at unarmed Indians. And I'm just wondering, as a filmmaker, how did you tackle that question?
There were actually some Afghan soldiers and some Gurkhas. So they were, and at that time they were the part of the British Army. They're,
Yeah,
quite strong. But yes, I mean, there were Darogas and there were other people who were from the Indian diaspora. There was also a lot of Sikh also. They were working for them. There was a lot of Muslims and even Hindus. All they were working for them also. There were some agents also, this believed to be, who were part of their mechanism in terms of penetrate the rebels also. Like for example, there was a guy called I think Hansraj, who was known as one of their spies, and who motivated people from outside to somehow penetrate and make them go in and inform them. So there are various, stories and controversies around him also. But I think the fact was, uh, what I relied on especially was on there are a lot of survivors from Jallianwala and from the others who have uh, given their statements, either to the Congress report and the Hunter Commission. A lot of them are now available, and they are quite. Those statements actually helped me build and stitch this entire event. What exactly must have happened. And so the Sardar Udham's life journey cannot be complete without this event. Actually, not only him, even Bhagat Singh. So I wanted to make a film actually on Shahid Bhagat Singh at some point, long back. But of course, I mean, then we were there was a surge of Bhagat Singh films, so that definitely disappointed me. But fine, that was made. Films were made. So I got a film like this, Sardar Udham, where I can get all of them
Yeah.
together. Like I explored Bhagat Singh also, I explored the event also, and what actually is more than the Sardar Udham is how I personally see as revolutionaries. It's just my own imagination how they would have been. I've of course not met them, but with these moments and the historical moments, what they've spoken, what they've written through.
Yeah.
See, actually, Sardar Udham, for 3 months. You don't know anything else. From March 1940 to July 1940. Before that, he was just an ordinary person, a common man. Um, and he had this revolutionary idea with him, and things that must be bothering him, things were very normal. He was thinking of, as I said, not just a freedom or a free India. He was thinking of an entire, free from all oppression across the world. So
Yeah.
it was just not one small thing that he was going through, that one revenge. He was not a killing machine. First, let me tell you, he was not a man who was just going just say, okay, he had guns. And revolutionary is not about just guns and and talwars and everything else. It's the ideology, it's the vichardhara that you go with. So
Yeah.
I think that's what I've tried to catch on him and even Bhagat Singh and in this entire film.
And actually, that really comes home to me that you think of this person whom you know only for a very short period of time, or uske aage piche, there's no great history to unpack. He's the son of a peasant in a small sort of pind of Punjab, and then 2 decades later he becomes a figure of history. But Nonica, I know that your book actually looks quite closely at the Hansraj factor, at the spies, at the British game of divide and rule. It was an old and ancient imperialist trick. Talk a little bit about that, and talk a little bit also. I think a lot of people think that Michael O'Dwyer, who's killed by Udham Singh, and Colonel Reginald Dyer, who opens fire at Jallianwala Bagh, are the same men. They're not the same men. So, Nonica, from a historian's perspective, and then I'll take that to Vicky.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the thing is that as Shoojit himself pointed out, it's a very layered narrative. The Jallianwala Bagh narrative is a very complex narrative. In fact, this is exactly what we and Datta set out to do. He retrieved or recovered the voices of people actually through the Hunter Committee reports, in which there is enough evidence. There's enough evidence to show that Hansraj played a pivotal role in the entire massacre, and he was an agent provocateur, and he was the right-hand man of Dr. Saifuddin Kichlu, and he was a Congress member of the Congress Party, and he played a very devious role during the massacre, in the massacre. And the point is that the Congress narrative actually silences the role of Hansraj. Though, of course, there are kind of shades of grey there as well, like Jaikar and even Malviya ji recognized that he was indeed involved in the entire conspiracy. So there are many layers which this book actually tries to unearth. But also, this conflation, this kind of this idea that Michael O'Dwyer and General Dyer are the same. This is a kind of matter of common perception, and I'm sure this film tries to rectify that common perception by showing that actually that it was Michael O'Dwyer who was assassinated. But let me also point out here that we need to kind of tease out some of the complexities, and I'm sure this film is trying to do that. And film is a creative medium. right? And I'm not actually looking for authenticity or sort of real truth in the film. What I'm looking at is the way creative medium actually represents a historical reality. For me, that's a point of interest. I'm not going into that. So it would be beautiful to see the film and see how history, fiction, and literature and film come together. But what I want to say, Barkha, very briefly here is this: that the Congress narrative, as well as this militant narrative, have dominated the discourse of Jallianwala Bagh. Whereas the narrative of Jallianwala Bagh is still to be explored by, by the film medium, or by the larger kind of context of understanding what really happened in the Bagh. And the point here is that the real hero of Jallianwala Bagh is actually Dr. Kichlu, neither Udham Singh nor Gandhi. It's actually Dr. Kichlu. Again, that voice has been silenced, because what we do is today, if you go to the Bagh, I go to the Bagh very often. I haven't been there recently though. I went there last year before COVID. And you see Udham Singh's statue towering over the Bagh. His ashes, which were brought from England in 1974, they are kept in the museum there, right? So he's really a figure, a major figure in the Bagh. And in the museum also has a lot of Gandhi. Gandhi never visited Amritsar, at that point, because he was arrested in Palwal. So basically, the entire narrative in the Bagh is dominated by these two competing discourses. One is the militant revolutionary discourse, and the other is the Gandhian discourse. And the real voices of the people have been silenced in that. So what my point here is that we don't even know, because Udham Singh papers are sealed. We are waiting for 2040, when the British government will release the papers after 100 years of his,
but isn't that outrageous? Like, for me, it's just outrageous that the British get to decide this, right? And,
so we really don't know. We really don't know many truths of the Udham Singh story. We are just piecing together fragments here and there, right? And from these fragments, we are actually trying to craft a story. But the point is that the point that if you say that Udham Singh's connection with Jallianwala Bagh is integral to his life history, I think that would just diminish his role as a revolutionary, because he's a global revolutionary. So
and both you and Shoojit have made that point again and again. So before I come to Vicky, Shoojit, if you'll briefly talk about that, because you said he's not a killing machine. This was not a revenge assassination.
No.
Yeah, I just want Shoojit to come in on how he imagined that moment when Udham Singh basically assassinates Michael O'Dwyer. And Vicky, I'd like to ask you also how you interpret that moment, because when Shoojit frames it as it's not a revenge killing. So let me come to you, Vicky, first. If it's not a revenge killing, what is it?
For me, it's a person standing up against an ideology with his ideology. Like Sujita mentioned, he was not a person. When you hear words like freedom and equality, they are very simple words, but their meaning, I've literally understood it better via Sardar Udham, via this process of making this film. Because, like Sujita mentioned, these were not individuals who believed in freedom of India or equality in India. They were not just confined to the borders of India. They were people who were talking about every man's freedom in this world, every man to feel equal in this world. And they had traveled so much, and they had seen oppressions from all across the globe, that they were against an ideology of oppression, against an ideology of colonialism. And like Nonica ji mentioned earlier also, for him to just that defines his thought process also, for him to just put his name across as Ram Mohammad Singh Azad says everything about what he believed in.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of questions, Vicky, before I come to Shoojit, on how, did you have to work hard to get a certain dialect, the way Punjabi was spoken at that time? A lot of our grandparents, those of us who come from those areas, my family does as well. How did you prepare for that? There are lots of questions on that. That's why I'm asking you, and then I'll go back to the narrative of the film.
Film is based in London and Europe, parts of Europe. So the Punjab portion is quite less in this, because actually Sardar Udham spent most of his time, and that's the period that we have captured when he was in London. So you will hear a lot of English in this film, and not the Hindi British English ki tum kha ke aao, ja ke aao, not like that. So you will possibly hear a proper language. So I rather call this a bilingual film, But in terms of the Punjab, I think we had some experts who helped us with a little bit of a Punjabi language. And I'm also somewhere little, I know a bit of the Punjabi language in terms of my whatever living in Delhi. So that surely has helped me. One last thing that you're asking me about, why did he kill, or what was that? Is it a revenge or not? See, it's a state of mind at that point. The Second World War was just about to begin, or it was already started outskirts. I don't know what must have gone in his head. Even I'm also discovering that through the film. What exactly must have gone through his head, nobody knows, and I don't know. I mean, I don't say that no, I know exactly that. No, it must have been some state of mind where he must have tried. Maybe this is my last option that I have, possibly. It's not just that I've gone there. I remember this. I've got a scar. I've got a pain. But is this the action I'm going to take? We still don't know. So I have kept it. I dealt with that. So I think rest in the film you will get the essence of it. That it was what exactly it is. I just don't want to spoil your
Yeah, sure.
curiosity about
Yeah.
the fiction. But you must see that. But that's an interesting thing, and that's what I've explored.
Yeah, I do have to start ending now, but Nonica, one thing about Udham Singh that the country probably doesn't know that you'd want everybody to know.
Well, that is that he's not just to be known as the assassinator of Sir Michael O'Dwyer, and nor should he be just reduced to being a martyr, because it's easy for us to turn human beings into martyrs, but also to situate him in the larger narrative of anti-colonial struggles which have been marginalized in the mainstream histories of Indian nationalism.
I think that's very well put. I'll give the last word to you, Vicky. You have fearlessness. Whether I think of, Uri, whether I think of, I know you're going to be playing Manik Shaw, Sardar Udham Singh here. What does courage, fearlessness mean to you, especially when reconciled with vulnerability, fear? How do you interpret courage, right? And we all define it in these very, some would say, filmy pat ways, but I know that all of you are trying to give the complexity of this character. So what is courage for you, Vicky, for you personally, when you interpret all of these characters that you play?
I feel for me, for any individual, courage starts from acknowledging your own vulnerabilities and fears. We often define courage as a response to an external threat.
Hmm.
But I personally feel that courage starts from actually acknowledging and facing your own complexities, your fears, your wounds. Like in the case of Sardar Udham, his courage for me was acknowledging his wound and then nurturing that wound and then living with that wound. It takes a lot of courage to do that. It takes a lot of courage to do that. And that was my learning as an individual, to kind of face that, reason that out in your own heart, and then live with that, and base your actions on that. For me, courage is a very internal process, and it starts with acknowledging and facing your own fears and your own vulnerabilities.
And what's the one thing, I'll ask you the same question, that you would want everybody, Vicky, to know about Udham Singh that you discovered while researching this character?
There are two things. One is a factual thing which we actually touched upon little while back, but we didn't discuss it. Was the difference between Doyer and Dyer? I would like
Yes.
to place that out in one line. Uh, Michael O'Dwyer was the Lieutenant Governor of Punjab in 1919, from 1914 to 1919, and he was the person who called in General Reginald Dyer from Lahore to Amritsar. And General Dyer was actually the person in on Jallianwala Bagh who gave the orders to start shooting on that unarmed crowd of people. Reginald Dyer actually died of a natural stroke in 1927, and Udham Singh assassinated Michael O'Dwyer in 1940, whose orders were there to Dyer to execute that massacre. So this is one
Yeah.
basic difference, so that people don't get confused that he had actually gone there to kill Dyer. It was not Dyer, it was Dyer who gave the orders.
Yes. Yes.
Secondly, what I would want people, and hopefully the film to resonate with people to the level that if people realize that there's a Sardar Udham in each one of us, I want them to feel that they can touch Sardar Udham, they can relate to him, they can talk with him, and his voice, his words reach to him like a commoner, reaches them as a commoner, not like a. Of course, he's a hero, but not as somebody we can't touch or we can't speak to. We like Nonica very beautifully said that we don't have to really reduce him like a martyr and then just close him in our history books.
Yeah.
I would really love for him to be our friend today.
I think that's beautifully said. And in some ways, Udham Singh's life and that journey, and the fact that the headline grabbing moment is 3 months, but the rest of it was an ordinary but extraordinary life, is that possibility of the Sardar Udham Singh in all of us. I can't wait to see this movie. Really, after a long time, I've been excited about a movie. So Shoojit and Vicky, congratulations. Nonica, I picked up a copy of your book, so can't wait to read more about that as
Thank
well.
you.
Thank you all three of you.
Congratulations.
And look forward to watching the film. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody. See you soon. Goodbye. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.